Tonight, we begin with something softer, something ancient. We're stepping into the hills of Canaan, not into thrones or crowns, but among brothers, among folded fields, among the quiet ache of dreams not yet understood. This isn't the story of power as the world measures it. It's the story of Joseph, a son, a dreamer, a thread in a story much older than himself. So, before we follow that dream too far into the wilderness, take a second to, like the video, only if slow. Sacred storytelling is your kind of thing. If it helps your mind settle, if it gives your heart space to breathe, subscribe, and in the comments tell me, where are you listening from? What time is it for you? It's always incredible to see how this little quiet space stretches across the world. Now take a breath and walk with me into the pastures of Canaan, where the hum of jealousy echoes, where a colourful coat stirs both wonder and betrayal, and where the story of Joseph unfolds, not with conquest, but with destiny braided through forgiveness. The valley carried the hum of unfinished stories curling beneath the soil. The grasses pressed low beneath the rhythm of footsteps layered with both belonging and fracture. Joseph moved steady through the fields, his coat trailing flame along the hills, the impossible colours curling bright against the muted tones of Canaan's earth. The sun climbed slow across the sky, pressing warmth into the stones, casting long shadows that braided themselves through the sheep, scattered wide along the slopes. His brother's glances lingered sharp, heavy with the ache of words unspoken, with the quiet hum of envy tucked brittle beneath their ribs. Yet Joseph's steps did not falter. The dreams curled stubborn beneath his chest, impossible to silence, impossible to explain. The sheaves bowing low, the stars bending toward him, their shapes unfamiliar, their promises unfinished. The God who threads quiet strength through forgotten places remained near, steady, unseen, watching as the ache of destiny braided itself into the hum of ordinary days, as the soil beneath their feet carried both blessing and betrayal, layered deep. The grasses shifted faint beneath the wind, threading low along the ridges, curling soft between stones, pressing gentle against the folds of fabric woven with favor, with burden. Joseph's coat shimmered as he moved, each step carrying the quiet ache of being seen, of being set apart before understanding why. The hills arched ancient around them, unmoving, their presence carved with the weight of stories unfolding long before his breath pressed into the world, their soil layered with the ache of promises yet to bloom. And though the fields hummed with tension, with glances sharp, with envy braided tight between those who shared the same blood, Joseph walked steady among them, his dreams curled stubborn beneath his ribs, his eyes pressed wide toward the sky, unaware of how far the story would stretch, how deep the fracture would run, how quiet the God who weaves presence into overlooked hearts would remain, and yet still how faithful. The fields stretched wide beneath the press of afternoon light, their slopes curling gentle along the ridges of Canaan. The grasses bent faint beneath the weight of footsteps, and the hum of unfinished stories threading through the soil. Joseph moved steady across the earth, the coat trailing flame along his shoulders, its colours impossible to ignore, stitched bright in crimson and blue and gold, threads woven with both blessing and burden. The fabric pressed light against his frame, but heavy against the ache of being seen too much, favoured too loud, braided sharp with the weight of love unevenly stretched across a family folded tight by pride and fracture. His brothers moved farther along the slopes, their shoulders drawn tense, their glances lingering long, layered with the ache of distance that blossoms when favour roots itself uneven beneath the same roof. The God who threads quiet strength into overlooked hearts remained near, steady, unseen, watching as the hum of resentment braided slow beneath their ribs, as words unspoken pressed sharp into their bones. The coat shimmered against the muted tones of the land, its colors layered with the ache of being set apart, of standing alone beneath the stretch of sky that carried both promise and fracture in equal measure. The hills arched ancient around them, unmoving, heavy with the ache of stories stretching forward, with the hum of destiny pressing soft beneath the soil. Joseph's dreams curled stubborn beneath his chest, their edges sharp, their ache impossible to silence, even beneath glances that cracked brittle with envy, even beneath the weight of colors that no longer carried only pride, but the ache of being set apart without understanding why. The grasses curled low beneath the hush of wind threading quiet along the ridges, the hum of unfinished stories folding beneath the soil, pressing faint against the earth as Joseph's footsteps moved steady through the valley. His brothers worked along the fields, their shoulders bent beneath the weight of labor, beneath the quiet ache of resentment that had pressed slow but certain between them. Rooted deep in glances unspoken, in words withheld, in love stretched uneven across the family's foundation. The coat trailed bright against the muted tones of the land, its impossible colors catching the light like embers curling soft along his frame, stitched with both blessing and the ache of distance bred from being favored too loud. But it wasn't the coat alone that pressed fracture between them. It was the dreams, the quiet, persistent dreams curling stubborn beneath Joseph's ribs, their edges layered with wonder, with mystery, with an ache of promise he could barely name. They came to him in sleep, in fragments, in visions heavy with meaning the world had not yet revealed. Sheaves of grain bowing low, fields bending beneath his presence, impossible scenes unfolding behind his eyes that pressed sharp into his chest even after he woke. And when he spoke of them, when he tried to share what curled inside him, what pressed urgent beneath his ribs, the fracture deepened. Their glances turned sharp, their words brittle, their shoulders drawn tense with the ache of hearing something they could not yet understand, something they did not want to believe. The God who threads quiet strength into overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the hum of destiny braided itself into the ache of ordinary days, as the soil beneath them carried both blessing and betrayal layered thick beneath their feet. The fields hummed quiet, ancient and unmoving, as Joseph's dreams whispered stubborn, impossible to unsee, impossible to silence, their edges pressing forward, even as his brother's envy cracked sharp between them. The hills pressed wide beneath the ache of unspoken things, the grasses curled faint along the ridges, bending soft beneath the hush of wind threading low across the land. Joseph moved steady through the soil of Canaan, the coat trailing impossible color along his shoulders, woven with both blessing and burden, stitched bright with the ache of being seen too much. His brothers worked scattered across the fields, their footsteps pressed heavy into the earth, their glances lingering sharp with the quiet hum of things they would not say. The God who threads quiet strength into overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the ache of distance braided itself slow but certain between them, as the hum of envy pressed tight beneath the soil of shared blood. The fields hummed with unfinished stories, with the fracture blooming soft beneath ordinary days, with the ache of favor stretched uneven across the lines of family. The coat shimmered beneath the sun, its colors impossible to ignore, its threads layered with love tangled sharp with pride unraveling toward resentment. Joseph's dreams curled stubborn beneath his chest, their edges pressing impossible beneath his ribs, their ache braided quiet with the hum of destiny not yet understood, but certain. The sheep grazed careless along the slopes, the sun arched wide along the horizon, the valley heavy with promises not yet spoken, not yet fulfilled, with fracture threaded quiet beneath every glance exchanged between brothers. The distance grew slow, silent, pressing sharp into the corners of the field, into the soil of Canaan, into the story that refused to stay still beneath their feet. The soil pressed firm beneath his sandals as Joseph walked steady across the ridge, the hills of Canaan curving wide around him, their edges ancient, unmoving, heavy with the ache of stories unraveling beneath their quiet watch. The sun stretched slow along the horizon, its warmth curling against the stones, its light pressing faint against the impossible colors trailing from his shoulders, stitched bright with favor, with burden, with the ache of being seen too much. His father's words still lingered behind him, the request spoken soft, wrapped in love, unaware of the fracture blooming quiet beneath the surface of their family, layered deep beneath the fields, beneath the glances of brothers whose silence hummed heavy with envy. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as Joseph's footsteps carried him toward the place where stories turn sharp, toward the fields where distance grows into betrayal. The grasses bent faint beneath the hush of wind, the valley stretched wide beneath him, its soil layered with both blessing and fracture, its air threaded with the hum of unfinished things pressing beneath the surface. His brothers tended the flock somewhere beyond the ridges, their shapes not yet visible, their glances not yet exchanged, but the ache of what waited ahead pressed low beneath his chest. His dreams curled stubborn beneath his ribs, impossible to smother, their edges sharp with promises unfamiliar, with visions misunderstood. And yet he walked steady, unaware of how near the story bent toward what breaks, how close the soil carried the ache of betrayal, pressed quiet beneath the ordinary hum of family, of fields, of footsteps layered soft against the dust of Canaan. The grasses bent low beneath the hush of wind threading across the hills, the fields pressed wide beneath the ache of unfinished stories curling toward fracture, toward the quiet unraveling that lingers long before it arrives. Joseph moved steady across the soil of Canaan, the coat trailing impossible color along his shoulders, woven bright with the ache of being seen too much, stitched with blessing, with burden, with the quiet hum of favor stretched uneven across the soil of home. His brothers stood farther along the slope, their frames outlined sharp against the ridge, their eyes drawn narrow, their shoulders tight with the hum of envy no longer buried deep enough to contain. And when they saw him, when his silhouette broke wide against the horizon, when the impossible shimmer of the coat braided flame against the muted tones of earth, the fracture pressed sharp beneath their ribs, impossible to ignore. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the ache of distance turned brittle, as envy bloomed not beneath glances alone, but beneath opportunity curling toward their fingertips. The soil hummed with unfinished stories layered beneath their feet, with the hum of betrayal no longer whispered, but folded loud into the ache of ordinary days. Joseph's dreams curled stubborn beneath his chest, impossible to smother, their edges pressing wide beneath his breath, unaware of how near the story stretched toward fracture. And though the hills arched ancient around them, unmoving, the moment had already turned. The moment envy found shape, found hands, found silence ready to unravel into action. The fields of Canaan pressed still, heavy with both blessing and betrayal, as the brothers watched their sibling approach, his steps light, his presence layered with dreams, his body trailing the hum of favor that braided too loud. And beneath the soil, beneath their breath, opportunity bloomed, brittle, quiet, irreversible. The fracture hummed beneath the soil, impossible to ignore, woven quiet beneath the ache of envy, pressed sharp beneath every glance exchanged, every word left unspoken. Joseph moved toward them, his footsteps curling faint across the ridge, the coat trailing impossible threads of crimson and gold along his shoulders, stitched bright with both blessing and burden, with the ache of being set apart before understanding the weight of what it meant to stand alone beneath the wide sky of Canaan. His brother's glances tangled brittle between pride and resentment, their silence no longer soft, but layered sharp with the ache of distance grown too wide, too deep, too unspoken to contain. The hills arched ancient around them, unmoving, heavy with unfinished stories, with the hum of betrayal pressing raw beneath the quiet ache of ordinary fields. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, steady, unseen, watching as the fracture unfolded not with noise, but with silence stretched brittle, with pride braided too tight, with favor worn too loud against the muted tones of soil and stone. The dreams curled stubborn beneath Joseph's chest, their edges pressing impossible to smother, braided faint with the ache of promises misunderstood, with visions that stretched wide beyond the fields, beyond the brothers, beyond the fracture that hummed beneath their feet. And though the sheep grazed careless along the slopes, unaware of betrayal blooming beneath them, the soil carried both blessing and the ache of unraveling, layered quiet beneath the hum of footsteps threading sharp across the land. The ache of brotherhood breaking braided into the ordinary ache of the day, into the hum of fields layered with stories unfinished, into the soil pressed tight, with betrayal not yet spoken, but inevitable, heavy, irreversible. The coat curled bright across the soil, its threads trailing crimson, blue, and gold across the dust of Canaan. Colors that once shimmered beneath the sun, now dulled beneath the ache of betrayal pressed raw into the ground. Joseph's brothers stood silent above the pit, their glances brittle, their breath layered sharp with what they had done, with what could not be unraveled now that silence had bloomed into fracture. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, steady, unseen, watching as the ache of envy pressed deep into their ribs, as pride braided sharp into the hum of distance, stretched too wide between blood, between family. The soil beneath them hummed with unfinished stories, with promises buried low beneath the ache of betrayal, with the quiet ache of what comes next. Their hands curled tight around the coat, fingers pressing against the impossible colors, against the threads once woven with blessing, now folded with consequence, with fracture, with the ache of distance braided into every seam. The sheep grazed careless along the ridges, unaware of unraveling blooming wide beneath them, the fields carrying both wonder and betrayal, layered deep into the bones of the valley. And when they dipped the coat in crimson, when the fabric soaked heavy with the ache of deception, the weight of what they carried grew loud, irreversible, impossible to undo. The coat in their hands, once stitched with love, now pressed heavy with proof braided in color, with the quiet hum of stories folded sharp beneath silence. And as they turned toward home, the threads trailing limp between their fingers, the fields pressed still, ancient, unmoving, watching as brotherhood unraveled beneath the hum of footsteps, threading soft across the land. The hills pressed still beneath the ache of what was carried home. The grasses bending faint beneath footsteps pressed heavy, with the hum of deception trailing quiet between brothers, layered brittle beneath the soil of Canaan. The coat trailed limp between their fingers, its impossible colors dulled now beneath dust, beneath the stain braided red across the fabric, its threads once woven with blessing now pressed heavy with consequence, with fracture, with the ache of what cannot be undone. Their father's tent stood distant along the ridge, its frame outlined soft against the sky, its corners curling ancient beneath the ache of stories unraveling wide across the land. The God who threads quiet strength into overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as grief curled brittle beneath footsteps threading sharp across the valley, as love bent beneath the ache of what was believed, of what was carried home dressed not in truth, but in absence. The fields pressed wide around them, ancient and unmoving, the soil heavy with unfinished stories, with betrayal layered deep, with the ache of dreams unraveled beneath glances too sharp to contain. Their father's breath cracked wide when the fabric pressed soft against his palms, when the coat, dulled beneath stain and dust, unfolded limp beneath his hands. The ache of absence bloomed raw beneath his ribs, braided with grief pressed sharp into every corner of his chest, layered heavy beneath the hum of loss not yet understood, but carried now in threads, in silence, in colors returned stained with the ache of unraveling. The valley held its breath as his cries fractured across the fields, as sorrow bloomed unchecked, as love fractured beneath what was believed, beneath what could not yet be undone. The valleys stretched wide beneath the ache of absence, the grasses bending faint along the ridges, the soil curling heavy beneath footsteps, pressed brittle with what could not be undone. Jacob's hands trembled against the fabric, the coat trailing limp across his lap, its impossible colors dulled now beneath the stain, beneath the dust, its threads once woven with blessing now pressed sharp with fracture, with the ache of stories unraveling loud beneath silence. His breath cracked wide across the valley, his cries folding sharp into the ridges, trailing brittle across the land as grief pressed heavy into his chest, braided raw with the hum of loss not yet understood, but carried now in threads, in absence, in the brittle ache of love stretched too thin. The God who threads quiet strength into overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as sorrow bloomed unchecked, as the hum of deception braided quiet beneath Jacob's ribs, beneath the soil of Canaan, beneath the ache of what could not yet be seen but pressed raw into every corner of the valley. The fields hummed with unfinished stories, with promises buried low beneath the ache of betrayal, with the fracture pressing wide between brothers, between family, between the quiet hum of dreams not yet complete. Jacob's cries braided sharp across the hills, ancient and unmoving, as grief pressed deeper, as the ache of what was believed folded heavy into every breath, as love fractured beneath the hum of silence dressed in color returned stained. And though the coat shimmered faint beneath the light, though the threads pressed soft against his palms, what lingered loud beneath his chest was absence, the ache of stories unfinished, of promises misunderstood, of dreams buried too deep to yet see how far they still stretch. The road stretched wide beneath unfamiliar skies, the soil curling dry beneath Joseph's feet, the hum of foreign lands pressing sharp beneath every step carried farther from home. The ache of absence threaded low beneath his ribs, braided faint with the hum of betrayal, of dreams unraveled, of stories pressed raw beneath silence and distance. The hills of Canaan faded behind him, the soil layered with unfinished promises, with the fracture of brothers left brittle beneath the fields, with the ache of love stretched too thin to hold. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as Joseph's footsteps carried him to the hum of exile, as the ache of what was lost pressed sharp beneath his chest, as the soil of Egypt curled foreign beneath his soles. The traders moved steady along the caravan, their voices curling in languages unfamiliar, their glances sharp with the hum of transaction, of survival, of lives carried across borders not their own. The ache of distance hummed faint beneath Joseph's breath, but the dreams curled stubborn beneath his ribs, impossible to silence, braided deep with the ache of becoming, of stories stretched farther than the horizon could yet reveal. The roads pressed unfamiliar beneath him, layered with both uncertainty and the ache of beginning again, of exile, of destiny braided quiet beneath loss. The horizon arched wide ahead, its lines threaded with roads he could not yet understand. But his story pressed forward, unfinished, unraveled, steady beneath the hum of dreams that refused to die. The walls of Egypt pressed ancient against the horizon, their stone carved with markings Joseph could not yet name, their presence unmoving, steady, layered with the hum of stories older than memory, older than exile, older than betrayal braided quiet beneath the soil of Canaan. His footsteps pressed steady across unfamiliar ground, the ache of absence curling sharp beneath his ribs, the hum of what was lost trailing faint with every step carried farther from home. The city unfolded wide around him, layered with corners he did not yet understand, with voices curling in languages unfamiliar, with glances sharp with transaction, with survival, with the ache of stories measured not in words, but in worth, in coin, in the hum of names forgotten along the roads of exile. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching, as Joseph's breath pressed slow beneath his chest, as the ache of being carried far from home braided into every step, as the dreams curled stubborn beneath his ribs, impossible to smother, impossible to silence, even here, even beneath the hum of markets layered with trade, with consequence, with the ache of belonging unraveled beneath foreign skies. The soil pressed unfamiliar beneath his feet, its stones worn smooth by centuries of footsteps threading quiet toward places measured in coin, toward stories unwound beneath the ache of being sold, of being carried into the hum of fate woven not with blessing, but with transaction. And though his name stretched distant behind him, though the land curled foreign beneath his steps, the dreams pressed steady beneath his chest, their edges sharp, their ache unfinished, braided faint beneath the hum of stories that refused to die. The walls of Egypt pressed steady against the sky, ancient stone layered with markings Joseph could not yet name, their faces unmoving, watching as the ache of exile braided quiet beneath his steps. The soil curled unfamiliar beneath his feet, its surface pressed smooth by the footsteps of strangers, by merchants, by those carried far from home and buried quiet beneath unfamiliar roads. The ache of absence hummed low beneath his ribs, the hum of what was lost pressing faint across his chest. But the dreams curled stubborn beneath his ribs, impossible to silence, layered with promise, with the quiet ache of becoming folded tight beneath the weight of survival. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the ache of being carried far from home wove into the hum of days stretched unfamiliar, as Joseph's breath pressed slow beneath his chest, braided quiet with faith that refuses to die. The markets hummed heavy with the ache of stories measured in coin, in worth traded across tables of stone, but the dreams pressed steady, impossible to unravel, layered deep beneath the ache of absence, of exile, of being seen as less than whole. And when the shepherd's song curled faint beneath his breath, woven quiet after the ache of betrayal, after the hum of loss, after the fracture of home, the sound pressed small but steady into the streets of Egypt. Praise braided faint beneath the ache of becoming. The song of the shepherd hummed quiet against the ridges of a city unfamiliar, layered with sorrow, with silence, but also with the hum of destiny pressing forward, unfinished, unwavering, stitched tight beneath exile, beneath survival, beneath the quiet ache of dreams too stubborn to die. The walls of the house pressed wide against the sky, their stone carved tall, layered with the ache of foreign soil, with the hum of stories not yet understood, with the quiet ache of exile braided deep beneath ordinary days. Joseph's footsteps moved steady beneath the weight of being carried far from home, his breath slow, his ribs pressed tight with the ache of absence, of survival, of dreams curling stubborn beneath his chest, impossible to silence, impossible to bury beneath unfamiliar skies. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the ache of exile folded quiet beneath Joseph's steps, as the soil of Egypt curled unfamiliar beneath his feet, as the hum of becoming pressed faint beneath the ache of absence. The house bore witness to unraveling braided soft with favor, with quiet strength, with resilience stubborn enough to bloom even here, even beneath the ache of belonging unraveled by exile. The ache of being carried far from home braided faint beneath every task, every glance, every day threaded tight with uncertainty. But the dreams remained, layered with the ache of promise, braided quiet with becoming. And though the roads behind him faded unfamiliar, though the soil pressed foreign beneath his feet, the house of favor stood steady, its corners woven with survival, with the ache of strength blooming not loud but quiet, braided steady beneath the hum of dreams too stubborn to die. The house hummed quiet beneath the ache of unfamiliar days, its walls pressed tall, unmoving, layered with the hum of voices Joseph could not yet understand, with footsteps threading soft across stone worn smooth by the ache of exile braided deep beneath the bones of Egypt. The soil curled unfamiliar beneath his feet, the ache of absence humming low beneath his ribs, braided quiet with the ache of distance, of being carried far from home, of belonging stretched too thin to carry comfort. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the ache of exile pressed faint beneath Joseph's steps, as the hum of unfamiliar days braided into his breath, as the dreams curled stubborn beneath his chest, impossible to silence, impossible to bury beneath favor, beneath survival. The ache of being seen hummed sharp beneath every glance, every task, every moment folded with the quiet weight of favor that stirs fracture in forgotten corners, in the spaces where strength blooms not loud but small, braided beneath the ache of loss, of exile, of presence worn too visible. The house bore witness to unraveling dressed in opportunity, to favor braided tight beneath the hum of jealousy, to the ache of being seen too much, too soon, in places not yet ready to carry the weight of becoming. And though the soil pressed unfamiliar beneath his feet, though the ache of distance braided sharp beneath his breath, the dreams remained, layered quiet with promise, stitched deep beneath the ache of belonging, impossible to silence, impossible to trade for the comfort of being unseen. The house of Egypt pressed wide beneath the ache of unfinished stories, its walls heavy with the hum of survival braided into every corner, every corridor layered with footsteps carrying both presence and fracture. The soil curled unfamiliar beneath Joseph's feet. The ache of exile pressed low beneath his ribs, braided quiet with absence, with distance, with the hum of dreams unfinished, but impossible to silence. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the ache of being seen braided tight beneath Joseph's chest, as favor pressed sharp into every glance, as becoming stretched quiet beneath the ache of exile, of belonging threaded faint but steady into forgotten corners. And still, the dreams curled stubborn beneath his ribs, layered deep with promise too raw to yet bloom, too certain to unravel beneath betrayal, beneath survival, beneath days that ache with exile. The house bore witness to unraveling dressed in favor, to silence braided loud with the ache of being seen too much, too soon, to dreams stretched fragile but unwilling to die. And though the roads behind him faded unfamiliar, though the soil pressed foreign beneath his steps, Joseph's story stretched forward, unfinished, layered with exile, with fracture, with destiny too sacred to dissolve beneath absence. The dreams pressed steady, impossible to quiet, braided with the ache of stories still unfolding, of faith stitched quiet beneath exile, of hope layered deep with the hum of becoming, impossible to silence, impossible to forget. The walls pressed wide around him, unmoving, layered with stone carved long before his story arrived, long before exile braided quiet beneath his breath. Joseph's footsteps carried him steady through the house of favor. The ache of absence pressed faint beneath his ribs, braided quiet with the hum of being carried far from home, with the ache of dreams curling stubborn beneath his chest, impossible to silence, impossible to bury beneath survival. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the ache of being seen braided tight into his story, as favor pressed sharp beneath every glance exchanged, as the house hummed faint beneath the ache of envy curling quiet behind doors, behind words spoken softer than they should be. The servants watched him now, their eyes trailing long across the corridors, their whispers folded brittle with the ache of admiration, tangled sharp with resentment, with the ache of belonging stretched uneven in unfamiliar halls. The ache of being seen too much hummed beneath his chest, impossible to outrun, impossible to dissolve beneath duty, beneath obedience, beneath the ache of exile. The soil curled foreign beneath his feet, layered with stories unwinding in languages unfamiliar, with footsteps threading quiet across the ache of survival braided beneath favor too loud, too soon. And though his story stretched forward, unfinished, layered with fracture, with belonging braided faint beneath the ache of exile, the whispers grew, quiet at first, but enough to stir shadows into places dreams were not meant to hide. The house pressed still around him, the stone layered with stories older than memory, its corners braided with footsteps, threading soft beneath the hum of favor stretched wide, and quiet envy pressed sharp beneath every glance. Joseph moved steady beneath the ache of being seen, his breath curling low beneath his ribs, his steps layered with the ache of exile woven faint beneath the ache of survival. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the house folded itself around him, as the walls whispered quiet of belonging stretched uneven, of dreams curling stubborn beneath his chest, impossible to silence. The servants' eyes lingered long now, their admiration pressed soft at first, folded brittle beneath the ache of stories unwinding not with noise, but with favor worn loud in places not yet ready to carry its weight. The ache of exile pressed faint beneath his chest, braided quiet with the hum of being carried far from home, of belonging measured not in name, but in usefulness, in presence that stirs the ache of envy braided quiet, beneath folded hands and watching eyes. The house bore witness to unraveling dressed in opportunity, to favor stirring fracture in forgotten corners, to footsteps threading soft through the ache of becoming, of dreams pressed raw beneath the hum of being seen too much. And though his story stretched forward, unfinished, layered with absence, with fracture, the ache of being watched remained, small, steady, braided with the weight of admiration folding into envy, impossible to unweave. The walls pressed ancient around him, unmoving, carved with stone that had watched countless stories unfold, fracture, rebuild. But for Joseph, the ache braided beneath his ribs, pressed new, raw, sharp, with the hum of being seen too much and understood too little. His footsteps moved steady beneath unfamiliar skies, the ache of exile braided into every step, into every corner of the house of favor that hummed now with whispers too brittle to ignore. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the hum of deception unraveled quiet beneath the ache of favor stretched too loud, as presence braided with survival began to press sharp beneath the surface of ordinary days. Her eyes lingered longer now, the master's wife, her glances curling with admiration, layered brittle with desire, with envy, with the ache of wanting more than the house would grant. Joseph's breath pressed slow beneath his chest, the dreams curling stubborn beneath his ribs, impossible to silence, impossible to drown beneath exile or longing or eyes that watched with both wonder and fracture, braided quiet beneath them. The ache of accusation had not yet spoken its name, but it hummed there, braided soft beneath the floor, pressed faint beneath footsteps, threading into hallways heavy with silence stretched too far. And though his story pressed forward, unfinished, layered with favor, with the ache of belonging unraveled by falsehood, the house of Egypt would not stay still. The fracture already stirred, quiet, braided beneath the hum of walls that carry more than just shelter. The walls pressed ancient around him, unmoving, heavy with the hum of unraveling braided quiet beneath favor, beneath fracture, beneath the ache of deception pressed raw into the stone. Joseph's footsteps moved steady beneath the ache of being seen, of being wanted, of being accused before truth had the space to speak. The house curled quiet around him. The soil pressed unfamiliar beneath his feet, layered now, not with promise but with the ache of falsehood, braided brittle beneath every glance, every word, every breath caught between what was seen and what was spoken. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as accusation braided tight beneath the hum of walls that once carried favor, as footsteps threaded sharp toward places measured not in belonging, but in betrayal. The ache of exile hummed low beneath his ribs, the dreams curling stubborn beneath his chest. Impossible to silence, impossible to bury beneath the ache of power wielded careless, beneath the fracture blooming raw beneath falsehood. The guards came quiet, their hands pressed heavy with the ache of consequence, their eyes brittle beneath the hum of duty stretched too thin to carry truth. Shackles curled cold around his wrists, the metal layered with more than restraint. It carried absence, it carried distance, it carried the ache of being silenced beneath lies that fracture wide without warning. And though his story pressed forward, unfinished, layered with becoming braided faint beneath betrayal, the ache of exile deepened, not measured now by geography, but by the ache of being unraveled beneath power, beneath silence, beneath the hum of deception that cages louder than chains. The walls of the prison pressed heavy around him, carved in stone unmoving, layered with the ache of forgotten spaces, with silence braided tight beneath the hum of exile stretched wide across unfamiliar ground. Joseph's footsteps moved steady across the floor, the ache of absence curling quiet beneath his ribs, his breath layered with the hum of dreams, curling stubborn beneath his chest. Impossible to silence, impossible to bury beneath stone, beneath shackles, beneath the ache of becoming hidden away. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the ache of distance pressed low beneath Joseph's breath, as the walls bore witness to unraveling braided beneath silence, as the ache of faith bloomed quiet beneath the hum of forgotten places. The stone pressed cold beneath his hands, beneath his knees, beneath the ache of prayers whispered soft into corners that have carried centuries of breath, of becoming, of unraveling braided with survival. The ache of exile hummed low, threaded with the ache of belonging pressed too faint to name. But the dreams remained, sharp, unfinished, braided faint beneath the ache of chains, beneath silence, beneath forgotten rooms woven with faith that refuses to die. The prison hummed quiet beneath him, ancient and unmoving, but even there, even beneath stone, the story stretched forward, unfinished, layered with the ache of waiting, with hope braided stubborn beneath exile, beneath stone, beneath the hum of dreams impossible to silence. The walls of the prison pressed ancient around him, unmoving, layered with stone, braided heavy with forgotten time, with stories whispered small beneath the ache of silence stretched wide across the floor. Joseph's footsteps moved steady along the stone, the ache of absence curling faint beneath his ribs, his breath pressed slow with the ache of exile layered thick beneath the hum of being unseen, unheard, buried beneath waiting stretched long. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the ache of distance pressed low beneath Joseph's breath, as the walls bore witness to unraveling braided beneath silence, as the ache of belonging folded quiet beneath the ache of being forgotten. The dreams curled stubborn beneath his chest, impossible to silence, impossible to bury beneath stone, beneath exile, beneath days stretched, slow, unfinished, stitched wide with uncertainty. The ache of waiting pressed heavy beneath his bones, braided faint with hope that refuses to die, with promises that curl quiet beneath the ache of forgotten places. The cupbearer's steps had long vanished, his voice trailed soft into memory, his promise of remembrance pressed brittle now beneath silence. And though his story stretched forward, unfinished, layered with becoming, with exile, with faith braided tight beneath absence, the ache of waiting bloomed raw beneath his ribs, pressing wide into the corners of the prison, humming faint with the ache of dreams unfinished, impossible to silence. The stone pressed cold beneath his feet, unmoving, layered with the ache of unfinished days, with exile pressed low into the soil of forgotten spaces. Joseph's footsteps moved steady across the floor. The walls curled tall around him, heavy with silence braided wide beneath the hum of waiting stretched long. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the ache of distance hummed low beneath Joseph's ribs, as the ache of belonging pressed faint beneath the ache of being unseen, unheard, unraveled beneath time unwinding slow. The dreams curled stubborn beneath his chest, impossible to silence, impossible to bury beneath stone, beneath exile, beneath the ache of silence threading deep into every corner of the prison, and yet beneath the ache of being unseen, Beneath the unraveling of days stretched quiet, faith remained. Braided small but steady beneath the hum of forgotten places, beneath the ache of waiting pressed raw against unfinished stories, against promises that curl beneath silence too loud to name. The ache of time unwinding stretched slow between his steps, but God wove presence there, in the quiet between footsteps, in the silence between breath, in the ache braided wide beneath waiting that refuses to fracture. And though his story stretched forward, unfinished, layered with absence, with exile, with belonging still too fragile to carry loud, the silence became sacred. The space between steps became proof of a God who threads time, even when the story still hums quiet beneath stone. The ache of silence braided faint beneath forgotten walls, layered with the hum of exile pressed raw beneath unfinished days. Joseph's footsteps curled quiet along the stone, his breath slow beneath his ribs, his chest layered with dreams curling stubborn beneath the ache of absence, impossible to silence, impossible to bury beneath the weight of waiting stretched too long. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the ache of being unseen hummed beneath Joseph's bones, as the walls carried the hum of forgotten stories braided beneath time unwinding slow. But the dream stretched wider than the prison, impossible to contain, impossible to smother beneath exile, beneath stone, beneath the ache of silence. And then, beyond the walls, beyond the ache of being forgotten, the dream circled back. Pharaoh's breath pressed brittle with unrest, his nights braided sharp with visions that refused to unravel, with stories folded tight in symbols, in fragments, in dreams that pressed wide beyond understanding. The ache of uncertainty hummed beneath Pharaoh's chest, braided with fear, with confusion, with the ache of needing answers that stretch beyond logic, beyond language, into the quiet hum of destiny unwinding behind forgotten bars. The cupbearer's memory bloomed brittle but loud, threading Joseph's name back into the world, into the ache of becoming, into the story stretched farther than silence. And though Joseph's feet pressed still beneath prison stone, his story curled forward, the dreams that refused to die stretching beyond chains, beyond absence, circling back into the ache of power undone by mystery, into the ache of destiny that waits even beneath exile. The ache of forgotten time braided quiet beneath the stone, the prison walls curling tall around Joseph's frame, heavy with silence pressed raw against his ribs, with absence layered wide beneath his steps. But the dreams pressed wider still, curling stubborn beneath his chest, impossible to silence, impossible to bury beneath exile, beneath forgotten names, beneath stone unmoving. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as Joseph's footsteps carried him beyond the ache of waiting stretched long, as the ache of exile hummed faint beneath his breath, as the ache of belonging whispered quiet beneath unfamiliar ground. The summons came sudden, brittle with urgency, braided with the hum of Pharaoh's unrest. The ache of mystery stretched wide beneath Egypt's corridors, their power fragile beneath dreams that refused to stay hidden behind language. The ache of becoming pressed steady beneath Joseph's steps as he stood now, his eyes trailing across the hall, his voice layered low with the hum of truth braided into visions, into fragments, into answers unfolding beneath the ache of fear. His words moved slow but certain, their edges curling with the ache of destiny unwinding in real time, their weight bending the room quiet as the dreams untangled. 7 years stretched lean, 7 years pressed with famine, the ache of warning braided wide beneath Pharaoh's throne. The ache of being remembered hummed faint beneath Joseph's ribs, braided now with the ache of favor turned toward him, with the ache of destiny bending beneath his breath, with the ache of dreams too stubborn to die. The ache of stone curled faint beneath Joseph's feet, his sandals pressing light against the ground, no longer dressed in chains, but layered with the ache of becoming stretched wide across unfamiliar halls. His breath moved steady beneath his ribs, the ache of exile braided faint beneath his chest, layered now with the hum of favor bending the silence into shape. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the ache of distance pressed quiet beneath Joseph's breath, as the halls of Egypt unfolded wide beneath the ache of stories turning, as dreams curled stubborn beneath his ribs, impossible to silence, impossible to bury beneath betrayal, beneath absence, beneath forgotten time. The palace pressed wide, its walls braided with carvings older than exile, older than becoming, their edges layered with the hum of favor stretched uneven but undeniable. Pharaoh's voice moved slow, braided with the ache of fear turned toward faith, his words threading Joseph's name into the ache of power, into the ache of authority laid sudden upon shoulders that once carried chains. And though the ache of waiting hummed beneath his breath, though the ache of survival pressed faint beneath his chest, the story bent now toward the sacred, toward becoming, toward dreams stretching wide into famine, into preparation, into the ache of hope braided into hands ready to carry more than just absence. The shackles unraveled, the palace unfolded, and the dreams that refused to die pressed wide, layered now with the ache of purpose, too sacred to dissolve. The palace hummed ancient beneath Joseph's steps, its halls braided with the ache of favor stretched sudden across shoulders that once carried shackles, its walls carved with symbols older than memory, heavier now beneath the ache of becoming. His breath pressed low beneath his ribs, the ache of exile curling faint beneath his chest, braided now with the hum of responsibility too raw to yet feel steady. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the ache of distance hummed beneath Joseph's steps, as the ache of dreams pressed wide beneath his ribs, impossible to silence, impossible to bury beneath robes now stitched with power, with favor, with the ache of becoming seen too much, too quickly. The ache of belonging pressed soft beneath the ache of command, his presence layered now with authority, braided wide beneath the ache of uncertainty, beneath the hum of Egypt's hunger stretched quiet beneath sun-split fields. The halls bore witness to unraveling braided beneath the ache of preparation, beneath the ache of famine, not yet spoken but certain, braided loud beneath his breath. And though his story stretched forward, unfinished, layered with destiny pressing tight beneath robes of linen, beneath chains uncurled, the weight of power settled raw against his palms, favor braided sudden into hands unready, yet steady, held by the ache of dreams that refused to die. The ache of vision pressed quiet beneath Joseph's ribs, braided faint with the hum of dreams curling stubborn beneath his chest, impossible to silence, impossible to smother beneath the ache of command now stretched wide across unfamiliar ground. His footsteps moved steady beneath the halls of Egypt, the ache of becoming pressed raw beneath his breath, layered quiet with the hum of famine not yet seen, but certain, braided into the soil beneath sun-split fields. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as Joseph's hands folded the ache of preparation into the ache of power, as the ache of knowing stretched long beneath the ache of waiting for scarcity braided beneath abundance. The The fields bloomed green, their edges soft with grain, their air heavy with harvest. But beneath the hum of plenty, the ache of absence pressed faint. 7 years braided wide beneath the ache of unraveling, not yet spoken, but promised, seen, carried now beneath his ribs like a second heartbeat. The ache of foresight pressed tight beneath his chest, layered with belonging stretched uneven beneath robes of power, with favor worn raw against the ache of becoming. And though the land pressed wide with abundance, Joseph's eyes curled forward, seeing famine braided beyond the ridges, carrying the ache of hunger, not yet here but certain, braided beneath time, beneath becoming, beneath the ache of dreams impossible to forget. The ache of scarcity pressed sharp beneath the hum of the fields. The land stretched wide and brittle beneath sun that once braided harvest, but now cracks the soil dry beneath unfamiliar footsteps. Joseph's breath moved slow beneath his ribs. The ache of exile pressed faint beneath his chest, braided with the hum of becoming stretched farther than absence, farther than betrayal, wider than famine curling quiet beneath distant hills. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as famine bent the fields hollow, as hunger braided quiet into the footsteps threading toward Egypt, as faces Joseph once knew but buried deep pressed closer with every drought-curled day. The ache of belonging hummed faint beneath robes braided with power, beneath silence stretched sharp between years, between fracture left raw beneath the ache of separation. And when their faces folded into view, older now, lined with the ache of scarcity, pressed hollow with distance, with grief, with unraveling, the ache of reunion pressed raw against Joseph's chest. The dreams curled stubborn beneath his ribs, impossible to silence, impossible to untangle from the ache braided loud beneath their arrival. And though the ache of forgiveness hummed faint beneath the ache of fracture, though time braided distance into every word left unspoken, the story circled back. The brothers returned, broken beneath scarcity, brittle beneath famine, unaware of how destiny still breathes between them. The ache of scarcity pressed sharp beneath the hum of the fields. The land stretched wide and brittle beneath sun that once braided harvest, but now cracks the soil dry beneath unfamiliar footsteps. Joseph's breath moved slow beneath his ribs. The ache of exile pressed faint beneath his chest, braided with the hum of becoming stretched farther than absence, farther than betrayal, wider than famine curling quiet beneath distant hills. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as famine bent the fields hollow, as hunger braided quiet into the footsteps threading toward Egypt, as faces Joseph once knew but buried deep pressed closer with every drought-curled day. The ache of belonging hummed faint beneath robes braided with power, beneath silence stretched sharp between years, between fracture left raw beneath the ache of separation. And when their faces folded into view, older now, lined with the ache of scarcity, pressed hollow with distance, with grief, with unraveling, the ache of reunion pressed raw against Joseph's chest. The dreams curled stubborn beneath his ribs, impossible to silence, impossible to untangle from the ache braided loud beneath their arrival. And though the ache of forgiveness hummed faint beneath the ache of fracture, though time braided distance into every word left unspoken, the story circled back. The brothers returned, broken beneath scarcity, brittle beneath famine, unaware of how destiny still breathes between them. The ache of belonging braided quiet beneath Joseph's ribs, pressed raw beneath the ache of faces once familiar, but stretched distant now beneath years, beneath famine, beneath exile that bent their edges hollow. His breath moved slow beneath the ache of recognition, curling sharp beneath his chest. Braided faint with the hum of survival threaded into days that unraveled wide without them. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the ache of absence pressed low beneath Joseph's bones, as the ache of home hummed quiet beneath halls braided with foreign soil, with power carried heavier than memory could yet steady. And then Benjamin, the youngest among them, his frame smaller, his voice braided softer with wonder untouched by fracture, by betrayal, by the ache of history laid sharp between glances. Joseph's eyes folded across his brother's face, their features braided with the hum of home, their presence curling wide beneath the ache of what was left behind. The ache of exile hummed raw beneath Joseph's chest, layered with love stretched too thin, with protection unwound across absence, with the ache of wanting to reach but folding still beneath time, beneath testing, beneath the ache of forgiveness unsteady. The dreams curled stubborn beneath his ribs, impossible to silence, impossible to untangle from the ache braided soft with the youngest among them. The ache of home braided wide across unfamiliar halls, pressing raw beneath belonging still unfinished, but steady. The ache of testing braided faint beneath Joseph's ribs, layered with the hum of waiting stretched long beneath years, beneath exile, beneath silence pressed raw across halls, not yet ready to carry reconciliation. His footsteps moved steady beneath the ache of unraveling, his breath curling soft beneath his chest, braided with forgiveness unfinished, braided with history bent sharp beneath distance. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the ache of deception hummed quiet beneath the ache of unfinished stories, as truth folded beneath silver slipped deep into sacks of grain, beneath the ache of exile returned brittle, beneath the ache of belonging left fragile and unsure. The fields beyond Egypt pressed brittle with famine, their soil curled hollow beneath the ache of scarcity, but here, beneath stone, beneath power, the ache of home hummed quiet, braided now with uncertainty, with glances too guarded to name, with plans pressed raw beneath the ache of hurt unhealed. The silver hidden deep pressed the story forward, not in cruelty, but in the ache of testing stretched wide beneath reunion, beneath becoming, beneath the ache of trust yet to breathe whole. And though the dreams curled stubborn beneath Joseph's ribs, impossible to silence, the ache of truth folded quiet, waiting, braided beneath deception dressed in silver, layered with belonging still unfinished, but steady beneath hope. The ache of history hummed raw beneath Joseph's ribs, braided faint with the hum of absence stretched wide across years, with the ache of belonging pressed uneven beneath robes, stitched heavy with power, with survival, with the ache of exile still curling faint beneath his chest. His footsteps moved steady through the palace halls, the ache of becoming braided with presence worn unfamiliar, with dreams stubborn beneath his ribs, impossible to silence, impossible to separate from the ache of history folding now beneath his breath. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the ache of being seen pressed raw beneath Joseph's bones, as the ache of reunion hummed brittle beneath words yet to breathe whole, beneath the ache of truth braided sharp beneath longing. Their faces stood before him, his brothers, older now, their edges drawn brittle beneath scarcity, beneath the ache of famine still curling wide beneath distant hills. And though the walls hummed with authority, with status, with the ache of survival pressed wide across nations, The ache of family pressed louder, braided beneath breath, beneath memory, beneath hurt. His vision blurred as the ache cracked wide across his chest, as the weeping pressed raw into halls layered with history, with the ache of exile, with the ache of being unseen too long. The palace could not contain it, the unraveling, the ache of recognition blooming loud beneath silence, beneath distance, beneath the hum of dreams stubborn enough to return. Joseph wept, and in that moment, he was seen at last. The ache of forgiveness braided wide beneath Joseph's ribs, pressed raw beneath the hum of fracture layered across years, beneath betrayal, beneath distance too deep to name. His breath moved steady beneath the ache of becoming stretched fragile across reunion, across presence, across history braided quiet beneath unfinished words. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the ache of exile pressed faint beneath Joseph's chest, as belonging braided uneven into steps once silenced by chains, as the ache of being seen curled raw beneath memory too sacred to outrun. The brothers stood before him, hollow beneath famine, brittle beneath silence, unaware of the ache braided wide beneath the face they once fractured. The dreams curled stubborn beneath Joseph's ribs, impossible to silence, impossible to untangle from the ache of history, woven into every breath, every glance, every hesitation folded between them. And though fracture hummed loud beneath the walls, though time unraveled raw across absence, the story refused to die. Forgiveness pressed quiet into the ache of betrayal, braided slow but certain into glances returned, into voices bending beneath regret, beneath recognition. The ache of reconciliation threaded steady, raw, unfinished, but alive, woven soft into the ache of fracture, into the ache of love too stubborn to dissolve, into the sacred hum of stories that refuse to unravel. The ache of belonging braided faint beneath Joseph's ribs, layered now not with absence, but with the quiet hum of stories folding soft into completion, into forgiveness, into the ache of destiny bending wide toward redemption. His breath moved slow beneath his chest, the ache of exile humming distant now beneath robes pressed with favor, with survival, with the ache of dreams curling stubborn beneath the hum of years that refuse to die quiet. The God who threads quiet strength through overlooked hearts remained near, unseen, steady, watching as the ache of history pressed raw beneath Joseph's footsteps, as the ache of fracture unwound slow beneath glances softened by memory, by presence, by the ache of home stretched back into view. His father's face returned, 1,000 lines braided wide across his eyes, his shoulders pressed brittle with time, with sorrow, with the ache of grief that hums sharp beneath stories unfinished. And yet, the story circles back. The ache of absence folds wide into reunion. The ache of betrayal presses faint beneath the ache of belonging. The ache of dreams refused to die, stretching steady into the ache of redemption, now braided soft beneath every breath, beneath every tear, beneath every name spoken into wholeness. The fields beyond Egypt bloom faint with promise, famine bending quiet beneath preparation, beneath becoming, beneath the ache of destiny stitched slow but steady across roads once cracked with exile. And though the ache of loss hums raw beneath memory, the full circle folds wide. A story once shattered now pressed steady with redemption, braided with forgiveness too stubborn to unravel, carried quiet beneath the hum of dreams fulfilled.